Happy final Monday in the month of July. I'm here, and if you're wondering who the heck is this guy, well, this guy right here, I'm just gonna make sure I turn the chat on at the same time. This guy right here is Frank Ferragini, aka Frankie Flowers, four-time best-selling garden author. My family has two garden centers, one in Bradford, one in Barrie, called Bradford Greenhouses Garden Gallery. I'm wild about weather, passionate about plants, and my main motivation is to get you to grow a better garden this year. And each and every week, I try to pop on here to answer your garden questions, to take your garden of Whedon and turn it into the Garden of Eden, to kind of take care of the problems that are out there. And the way that we do that is by you, and you asking questions. And those questions you can just pop down into the comments. Those comments, I'll see them, I'll pop them up on screen. If I don't get a chance to answer your questions, what'll happen though is the community of gardeners that pop on here will help us answer those questions as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the world of gardening and what's been happening lately. Well, first, what we're going to tell you a little bit about is in Ontario and really right across the country is we've gone through some numerous days of over 30-degree weather, and with that heat warnings all the way from Western Canada into Atlantic Canada, including us here in Ontario. And when that happens, when we have a warm day, and that daytime temperature is around 30 degrees. And then at night, we have a temperature that's over 20 degrees with the humidex around 30. There's really no rest period for a plant, because a plant generally will like a warm day and a cool night. That'll put it into a rest period that will give it really good abilities to grow. So what happens in those periods when we have that warm day and that warm night is plants will go underneath heat stress. I wanted to show you what sometimes heat stress looks like as well, because these are some of the top questions I've been getting asked this week. And this is the one question that a lot of people asked me about was, for instance, heat stress in their tomatoes. So as we can see over here on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that the leaves on this tomato plant are wilted. We can also see sometimes the fruit will get cracks in them. That'll be by inconsistent watering as the fruit cracks. But the wilt that we see, and even sometimes potentially a fruit drop, is really a plant's defense mechanism trying to make it survive during hot periods of weather. Watering is key, keeping them very well watered. Not watering at the big warmest part of the day is also helpful. During hot periods of weather, reducing your fertilization is also a little bit key as well. So these are some of the ways that we can actually really prevent the damage that heat stress can do. Generally, plants will bounce back. Yes, we may lose some fruit, but the fruit drop. The reason why the plant will drop the fruit is where a plant will put most of its energy to. By dropping some of that fruit, it'll allow that plant to be a little bit more in a survival. If we want to even maintain those plants better, if they're vegetable plants, putting some clean straw down as a mulch to keep the roots a little bit cooler to maintain moisture. Sometimes people will even build screens to kind of screen the sun from them. That's why generally with most greenhouses that lack ventilation, that actually have no ability to roll out the sides or even to open up the roof, you're generally better to empty a greenhouse in the summer than to grow plants within it, because they'll usually fry within there from heat stress. Another thing about heat stress is you'll start to see, this is another top question I got this week. And that top question I got this week was all related to Japanese maples. And what I got a couple of people that were asking me about their Japanese maple, because what they were seeing with their Japanese maple was they were seeing a brownish of the leaves and the leaves themselves dropping. This is another indication of heat and also sunlight. This is called sun scorch. This can happen not only in Japanese maple, but on just other deciduous and hardwood stem trees. Sometimes you can even see this with some shrubs. It'll drop the leaves in the severe cases and then refoliate. This will not kill a plant. Mulching, really important to keep the roots cool. This will not kill a plant. But if we have consecutive years of this happening, it will almost weaken that plant's immune system, making it more susceptible to disease, which over time can harm the plant. So just keeping it well watered, very important. If this is happening over repetitive years, maybe moving that plant to a little bit less of a sunny location could be key as well. So those are just some of the top questions. So I got questions this week on heat stress. I got questions this week on sun scorch. I also got questions this week on Japanese beetles. Lots of questions on Japanese beetles. So a couple reminders of Japanese beetles. If you pick and squish a Japanese beetle, yes, you'll kill them, but also when you squish a Japanese beetle, it will release a pheromone. That pheromone sometimes will attract more beetles to the area. It's almost the same pheromone that a beetle trap has. So the key is when you're picking beetles off of your plants, if you're doing that, just put them into a soapy water and then discard them thereafter. Or if you're using a beetle trap, it's that same pheromone. We want to put that trap far away. Insecticidal soap on Japanese beetles really doesn't do too much because they're a hard shell insect. But the best time to remove beetles off your plants is in the morning when they're a little bit colder, because they're dopier when they're colder. You can actually just shake the plant, they'll fall right off. Even if you put a bed sheet right underneath, that will help you out as well. Okay, let's go to some other questions that are out there too. I just wanted a couple other top questions this week. So my top 5 questions this week: not flowering. A lot of plants out there that are delayed in flowering, not flowering, and even one instance with a strawberry vanilla hydrangea that wasn't coloring. Those are also could be the possibility of heat stress. A reminder: plants put their energy to a bloom. So if something's not blooming, it could be that that plant is putting itself into dormancy to prevent it from putting too much energy. So typical plants that are not heat tolerant are things like pansies, for instance. They won't bloom in hot weather. Osteospermum is another plant that doesn't bloom in hot weather. So some plants will have what's called heat delay. Actually, if we have a warm day and a warm night consecutively, we may actually even see our fall flowering mums flower later because of heat delay. So those are some of the heat delay. And then the final question that I had was squirrels eating tomatoes. I had a couple friends out there and saying they're growing some beautiful tomatoes, but the squirrels are eating everything. I put hen manure around the base of my plants. It's been working wonders to keep away. I had some rabbits that were trying to nest in my planters where I have my tomatoes. And as soon as I put the hen manure down, the pelletized hen manure, they got out of there. Another reminder: something as simple as a plastic owl can somewhat scare them from the area. Or if you can't beat them, you feed them. You put a squirrel feeder on the far area away from your tomato plants where those plants are affecting, and that'll help out as well. So let's go to some of the questions that we have already that are popping up here. We got Jen. Hi, Jen, this evening. Happy Monday. I had to move our Bobo hydrangea. So Bobo hydrangea is a small variety of hydrangea that's in a cone-shaped flower. Beautiful plant. This past weekend, I deadheaded the blooms, cut back to a third, and I've used root booster. They're looking very unhappy. Is there anything else I can do? Please pray for the Bobos. LO. Thank you. So moving or transplanting a plant when we have hot conditions, not the ideal time. The ideal time would be on a week where we actually have cooler weather that's pushing its way in, and we have some rain that's in the forecast. We do have rain in the forecast that's coming tomorrow. The Bobos are probably going underneath a little bit of heat stress, but as well as transplanting stress. So using a root formulated fertilizer, I like using Quick Start, which is Miracle Grow's Quick Start. But as long as you're using that formulation, that will help out by keeping them well watered. Super important. Every day, go out there and give them a soaking if Mother Nature doesn't. It is a risk, though, to transplant during hot weather because it is stressful, and sometimes that stress could kill the plants. We'll pray, we'll water, but Bobo hydrangeas are pretty tough overall. We got another person giving a shout out today. We got Angela. Hi, Frank. Hi to you this evening as well. We got my good buddy Matthew Amos, who's always about movies. I saw Twisters last week, but the original Twister was very special to me. I remember seeing the movie with my grandmother. That was very, very hard to beat the original Twister, I said. And I also saw Fly to the Moon with Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson. So I would agree. I did see Twister. Twister was an entertaining movie, but I would say the first Twister was the better one of the two. Carol King, the beans I sent you pictures are giving a bountiful supply. My beans too, my pole beans have been giving a huge amount of supply. But a reminder, you got to remove those beans when they get to a size that I would say is about 6 inches in size, 6 inches at the most in terms of length. Because if they get too big, they'll start to have a real kind of tougher taste. You're better to harvest them earlier than to wait. Best time to harvest, of course, is either in the morning or evening. Best time, though, is in the morning because you have the cooler night. So we're harvesting in the morning before the sun gets high, and they'll actually hold a little bit longer for you as well. Carol Jones, who's saying hello from Quebec. Nice to see you this evening as well, Carol Jones. Carol Jones also saying, hen manure is the best tip Frank ever gave me. It worked well. It's amazing. It actually, so when I've been using the hen manure on my vegetable beds, it's been keeping a lot of those creatures away. But as well as I've noticed that my plants are like, it's a repellent, but it's a feed too. So my plants, like right now I'm looking out and I can see my kale, huge and healthy. My peppers, unbelievable. My tomatoes are banging off like crazy. I had pretty good yield of zucchini, but just recently my zucchini started to get powdery mildew. That happens every year when we got hot, humid conditions and the way that we're seeing the frequency of rainfall. A lot of cucumbers, zucchinis getting either a rust or powdery mildew. So yeah, it's a great thing that's out there. Thanks, Carol, for that as well. Nancy. Hi, Frankie from Oral Medonte. Nancy, I love Oral Medonte. My son is up at Horseshoe Resort all the time skiing. Carolyn Wiley, the heat is affecting my tomatoes. I water them daily, every second day, but I don't have much production. I use chicken fertilizer, plus the squirrels are also eating, even though I put out the water. So the heat is affecting the tomatoes. It could be affecting with some of the yields that are there. I water them every second day. So it depends. If they're in containers, I'd be watering them every day. Even if they're in the ground, I'd be doing more of a consistent watering because that's kind of key. The production of them as well could still come on still as well. It's more about the flowering. So are you seeing flowers? Have you removed any of the bottom stems that are there to allow some more airflow and air circulation? A reminder, sometimes we're removing stems out to let light in. And also, we don't need that many tomatoes that are there. We just need some production. So I'd be curious, Carolyn, if you could send me a picture to frankie@frankieflowers.com, I will be able to help you a little bit better. Sue, my good friend Sue up there in cottage country. Hi, Frank. I believe my mountain ash may have had fire blight. However, I don't notice any damage to the trunk and branches, just the leaves. Mostly all turn brown. Can it bounce back? It's not going to bounce back. This year it may actually refoliate. But what I would the key is that even if it doesn't bounce back, let's hope that it does, keeping it watered so it doesn't burn into a drier period. We want to reduce the amount of stress. So keeping it fairly deeply watered, really key. In the fall, any of the leaves that fall, I want you to clean them up as best as possible so that we're not going to see any of the blight, the pathogens sitting on the ground that are dormant for next spring. And then next spring, before we get warm, before the buds crack, that's when I'm going to want you to apply a dormant spray kit. That dormant spray kit will reduce the risk of seeing that fire blight reoccur for next year. So I hope that helps you out. We got Greg, tons of flowers, but only 2 cucumbers. So Greg, sometimes when we're seeing that happening, that's a lack of pollination because it takes 2 to make a thing go right. It takes 2 to make it out of sight. So cucumbers, zucchinis, we have male and female flowers, but what we need is insects, notably bees, to actually fly from those flowers to pollinate and set the fruit. If we don't have that pollination happening, then we're not going to get that much of a fruit production that happens. And sometimes if we're having only male flowers, that's also a thing as well. If you want, and you don't see enough insects, we have all these flowers, what you can do is even just quickly just take a Q-tip and go from flower to flower to flower to flower. That's sometimes enough just to help the pollen set as well. We got Sonia. Hi, Frankie. My peonies have brown spots on my peonies. That's a song. That'll look like burn marks in the middle of the leaves. Any tips? Most likely this is a blight and or disease. Peonies typically in the summer months can have this happen. Should you be concerned? It's not going to kill the plant whatsoever. You should have removed all the blooms and all those spent blooms. So if you have any seed heads that are sitting there, I would remove those right now. This fall, when you go to cut them back, it depends. If they're a herbaceous peony, which is a woody peony, like a tree peony, we're not cutting them back that far. But if they're just your typical traditional peonies, we're cutting them back. And I like to leave at least 10 inches on the base. But any of that foliage that we cut back, I would remove, discard, not put in the compost, and just to try to reduce the amount of blight or even that disease that's there. Air circulation around the garden could be key. So if your garden's really, really packed tight with many different perennial plants, sometimes dividing this fall and kind of thinning out the garden could also be very beneficial as well. We got Andrea Sweeney. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Frankie. How can I prevent blossom end rot on my tomatoes? So blossom end rot is generally caused by inconsistent watering. So what happens is you get a whole lot of water, a heavy rain, and then maybe you're away for a weekend, they get no water, or they're not getting the absorption of the water right. So by increasing calcium to a tomato, it can actually help improve the efficiency of the exchange of moisture and nutrients into the tomato, which prevents that rotting that we see on the bottom of a tomato. So for those that don't know, blossom end rot is when you have that perfect red top on your tomato, and then you look at the bottom, there's scarring and or a black spot. That's blossom end rot. By improving calcium, we can reduce the amount of blossom end rot, and also being more consistent with our waterings, really key. If you see a tomato plant and that tomato plant, I showed you heat stress where there's a wilt, but if we see that wilt and then we see those leaves turn the other way, that's a dangerous spot that we want. It's okay to see our tomatoes go a little bit drier where they go into a little bit of wilt, but giving them a deep watering is really key. So I hope that helped you out there as well. We got Francesca. Hey, Francesca, hello from Etobicoke, Ontario. Hello, Etobicoke is a great, great place in the province of Ontario and the city of Toronto, of course. We got Michelle Price. Hi, Frankie. Good evening. 2 questions. $5 a question, so $10. Just joking. Is there anything you can do to prevent or manage some of the yellowing on leaves? Question 2. I have 4 anemone. I can never say that word, right? Plants. We're all doing well in full sun, but now I'm seeing a lot of browning leaves. So the reason why we're getting the anemone, there we go, got it. The reason why, so that's also a cool loving plant. The anemone is a plant that would generally like cooler weather. So you'll see that they're the best in spring to early summer, and then they're the best in late fall into late summer into fall. That's when they're best, when we have cooler nights. These warmer nights are wreaking havoc on them. So a lot of the browning of the leaves is due to the amount of sun and heat that we're receiving. Any of those browning leaves, what I would recommend for you is to cut them off with a pruner. Is there anything to do to prevent or manage some of the yellow leaves, yellowing on some leaves? It depends on what that yellowing is. That yellowing could be rust. It could be yellowing caused by heat, too much sun exposure. So what I would need to know is, what is the plant? And maybe some pictures too. So Michelle, if you could send that to me at frankie@frankieflowers.com. So that's Frankie with an IE, frankie@frankieflowers.com. A picture in that would be gratefully helpful for me as well. So now here we go from Connie. Hi, Frankie. My purple Cherokees are amazing. That is my favorite heirloom tomato. Beautiful flavor. I will tell you that fruit itself, it's like this dark red. And if you're wanting like a sexy looking tomato that tastes absolutely fantastic, Cherokee purple, it's an heirloom variety tomato. So the plant, you need space. The plant gets friggin' big, huge. And so you need the space for it. And one plant can do a lot. Sometimes I would plant 2 to 3 of the Cherokee purples because the odd time they'll get a Fusarium wilt, which is quite common in some heirloom varieties. And that could cause dieback. But I'm glad that you're enjoying it, Connie. It's like my favorite, like the best. And then there's the recommendation. This is what I love about the community gardeners that we have on here. We had a question earlier about how to prevent blossom end rot. I gave the recommendation of calcium. Penny's saying as well to Andrea, calcium. So calcium is the way to do it. And just a reminder that I was talking about hen manure. Hen manure has calcium, minute amount of calcium, but it actually helps out. Miracle Grow has a hen manure available. There's other pelletized hen manures available as well. Mano, hi Frankie, how are you? I'm doing great. Great on a Monday night. My climbing rose leaves are getting rust, black dots, and falling off. I wonder why. So that is generally with roses, and with climbing roses, you're going to get black spot. Black spot is a disease, which is a fungus. It can be done by, sometimes caused or increased by overhead watering. So using a sprinkler that's just dropping down and then hitting the ground and bouncing up. So with roses, always you want to water the root and try to keep water off the foliage. The heavy downpours or rainfall that we've seen with the hot, humid conditions is another way. So we want to use a fungicide. That fungicide will reduce and eventually eliminate the black spot that you see on your roses, but you may have to do a spraying every 10 days. Fungicides can be purchased. They can go to your local garden center. Miracle Grow does have a fungicide available. There's others on the market, as I've been mentioning as well. But just go to your local garden center, independent garden center, or your garden supply store and look for a fungicide. So that's what you need that's there. Carol, my plants are in pots due to me having a big hip replacement made. Cherry tomatoes doing well. Because they are in pots, daily watering. If we don't get rain that day, you got daily water. And a reminder, like my tomato plants are in 20-gallon pots. They're massive pots. I water those guys every day. And when I water them, I go through and I soak them. And then I go water the rest of the garden. Then I come back and I soak them again. Because the potting soil, as a reminder, is like a sponge. That first watering, you get a little bit to the roots and a lot of it may flow out. that second watering really helps out. So Carol, daily watering. That's my recommendation for you. We got Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Frankie from St. Catharines. I have a large patch of chromosia. It's like in the south side of the north fence. Get 6 hours sun this year. The leaves have all turned brown, and half the flowers I've ever had any succession. So I got to see what this is because I'm not overly familiar with. I'm just going to type this in. Chromosia. Oh, okay. This is actually a perennial plant. Yes, I do know this plant. So just to let you know, it's a plant that actually becomes very easy overcrowded. And because it gets very easily overcrowded, this is a plant that should be divided every 2 to 3 years. So this year, the leaves have all turned brown. I have half the flowers I've ever had. Any suggestions? So this fall, what I would really recommend that you do is dividing and then even thinning it out, but even replanting. That'll actually stimulate some more growth. But because it's such a fast growing plant that can actually grow and fill an area quickly and start to choke itself out, so dividing and transplanting would be key, and even thinning a little bit of that patch. So giving some to friends. And all you can simply do is you just go through and you remove a few sections in certain areas, put some soil into those sections that you remove. If you want to put it in other locations, you put it in other locations, or you just get some smaller 1 to 2 gallon pots, and then you can actually pot them up, give them to your local garden clubs, or even just put them for sale or give them to a friend, and you're going to be off to the races that are out there. We have Lizanne. Hi, Frank from Garson, Ontario here. My zucchinis are not producing like last year. They are turning yellow and dying before they had a chance to get bigger in size. What do I do? It's really unfortunate that there's not much you can do once they start, because that's a rust and or blight that's happening. So what I would recommend is next year, don't plant your zucchinis in the same area. Crop rotation is really key. This fall, or even if they die back, if you want to just get rid of the plant, try to clean it up as best as possible. Next year, where your zucchinis were, plant some leaf lettuce, plant some leafy greens, plant some kale in that area. That'll actually what's called crop rotation. That'll reduce the chance of getting that disease. This year, where you had your kale, this is where I want you to plant your zucchinis. So it's really, and it's also something that's all related to really the amount of rainfall that we saw, the amount of humidity, the amount of heat. That's just a recipe for this happening, and it's happening to lots of people, including me. Mano, hi Frankie, how are you? My climate, we did this one already. What flowers can you, so here's the question. What flowers can you plant to help the bees to pollinate? So there are several different plants that are great for pollinating garden. A lot of the times you'll be very surprised if you look at the color of flower that bees are very much attracted to, because they're very much attracted to blue and or purple flowers. So salvia is something that's really good for the bees that are out there. They're a little bit more of an earlier pollen source. Echinacea, which is coneflower, is a little bit later of a pollen source. Some spring flowering bulbs, really important for bees for that early flowering. So some of the daffodils are really important for them as well. Fruit trees, super important for pollination and even to give fruit. So there are several plants out there that we can use in a pollinator garden. And I just put out a video. Well, I think the video was, did I put it out? Yes, I did. I put out a video about a new introduction next year, and I've seen lots of bees on this plant as well. And that is the Monarch Madness ageratum. It's an annual plant that flowers blue. The amount of monarch butterflies that I've had on this, so each and every year I get sent a bunch of different varieties of new plants. They're introductions for next year. They let me grow them. I test them out. I give some recommendations, and I see what I think about them. And those ones there that I've tested, the most one that I love the most is the Monarch Madness. Unbelievable plant. So I hope that kind of gave you some suggestions if there's two. We got Jean. Hi, Jean. Any suggestions for new varieties of bee balm? Majority of mine have powdery mildew and it's hard to control. Thanks. So I'm going to look up that. There's a mildew resistant. I'm going to look it up right now. Bee balm. I'm forgetting the name. I think it's by Proven Winners. Delaware. Except there's all these different things that people do. The history of Monarda. So, hooray for John Monarda, blah, 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 blah. Okay. This variety here is not one that I want. There are some mildew-resistant variety bee balms that are out there. Forgive me. Mildew-resistant bee balm. This is it right here. Marshall's Delight. So, in a 3-year study comparing 17 different varieties of bee balm, at the University of Vermont, concluded the most disease-resistant bee balm was Marshall's Delight. So Marshall's Delight is your best one that you can do. I'm just going to see if I can pull up a picture of Marshall's Delight that's here, and I will do that right now. So I'm going to show this on your screen right now. So if you're watching, if you're listening, then you can pop on and take a look at this on YouTube, or you can take a look at this on LinkedIn. I pop it up there, and of course, Facebook. So this is the Marshall's Delight. This is one it's a bergamot, but it's Monarda. It's very fragrant. The leaves themselves, flowers are showy, more of a pink to red color, where the flower time is summer to late summer or early fall. So this one here is the best one that you can get there that is more resistant to powdery mildew. And this is a year for powdery mildew, by the way. Generally with my Monarda, once it gets powdery mildew, I just cut it right down. I enjoy the flowers. It gets powdery mildew. I cut it right down. The new flush comes back. Sometimes I can get and push a second bloom out of it, but I just cut it right back right away. We got Susan from Cape Breton. How you doing out there today in Cape Breton as well? We have Carrie. Hi, Frankie. With this heat, is it still okay to fertilize the hanging baskets early in the morning or late in the afternoon? Thanks. Tomorrow we have some rain that's coming through. What I would do is I would do my fertilizing this week on Sunday. And yes, you want to still fertilize container gardens for sure. I would just hold off because we are going through the next few days. We'll have humidex values here in Ontario, the upper 30s, lower 40s. But by the weekend, Saturday through Sunday, we'll see that humidity leave, and then that's a better time to fertilize. We got Michelle follow up to my first question. Yellowing leaves is a variety of my hydrangeas. So generally, when you're seeing yellowing leaves on hydrangeas, is they could be an area of too much sunshine that could be there. It could be heat stress as well. But if this is something that reoccurs year after year, I'd be putting them into a less sunny and or windy. Sometimes if they're in a full sun area that gets a lot of wind, you can get a lot of drying. The yellowing leaves, reminder, hydrangeas are water hogs. They love water. So the more water you pound to them, that's why hydrangeas overall this year have been looking so good, because we had such a wet July. That's why the hydrangeas, if you're like, why are my hydrangeas so great this year? It's all the rain that we had, and that's the reason why they're there. We got, I just joined. Sorry if I missed, but my tomatoes are cracking on the top. Never had this before. Hello from Barry. Tomato cracking is generally what happens is you're getting a lot of fast growth. So and a lot of the times that happens when there's a lack of water, and then they get a whole big shot of water with heat, and boom, you get fast growth. And what you have is the plant's actually growing faster than what basically the cell coating can keep up, and that's where you get your cracking. So the way to prevent cracking is just to make sure that they don't go too dry during periods. But sometimes it's really hard to prevent cracking when we have extreme downpours of rain. So this year we're going to see a lot of cracking fruit on tomatoes that are out there as well. Francesca, thank you very much for your help this week on my boyfriend's Claudio's Place with poison ivy and poison oak. You're welcome very much. Francesca sent me an email, so email me, frankie@frankieflowers.com. I'm always there to assist as well. Hi, Frankie, another question. Can I prune back my lilac tree now, or should I wait? Thank you. I would wait. Lilacs we prune after bloom because right now they're starting and have developed some of the flower buds for blooms next season. So you're a little bit late to do it. If it's crazy unruly and it's just getting out of control, prune it back by a third. You may not have as many blooms next year, but just as a reminder, in future years, prune after they bloom, and that's the best time for that. Tracy Reynolds, I keep missing your lives with busy wedding season. Glad I caught you this time. Tracy, I hope you're having a successful wedding season as well. Tracy has a wonderful flower shop in the Beaches. We got Lacey. Hi, Lacey from Oshawa out there. We got Andrea Andrea saying good evening from Innisfil. We got Mono who's saying thank you as well out there as well. We got Sue that's actually that's answering some of the other questions to Jean. It's been a rough year for this one, many plants. I have a few different varieties of Eve Balm, and they all have it this year. Yeah, the powdery mildew, it's been a tough year, just the way the weather has been going out there as well. Are all varieties of geraniums aggressive? So if you're talking about annual geraniums, not all are aggressive. If you're talking about cranesbill, which is the perennial geranium, they're fairly vigorous growers. So it depends on which geranium you're talking about. So I would assume you're probably talking about perennial geraniums that are out there as well. So I'm going to do one more question here because we're at 30 minutes. And that is going to be with Carrie. Raised gardens. Do you recommend galvanized steel or wood, particularly for veggies? I've been using troughs in galvanized steel. The reason why I like the galvanized steel is it will never rot. The soil heats fairly quickly. Galvanized steel is inert, so it's not going to affect any of the soil at all. So nothing leaches into the soil. Whereas when you're using wood, sometimes people use pressure treat. Don't use pressure treat because what they treat the wood with will leach into the soil that will go into your food. So if it's my preference, would be galvanized if you can. I hope I helped everybody this evening just a little bit, maybe piqued your interest just a little bit, made your garden just that little bit better, and maybe made you smile just a little bit. I'm going to be on Breakfast Television tomorrow in studio. I'm here just to help you have that garden grow great. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening. Peace, love, happiness, and keep blooming all. Yeah, keep